All right, welcome. I'm Vince Polito, and I'm going to share 3 barriers to using the law of attraction positively. All right, so we're always using the law of attraction. The law of attraction is alive and present for all of us, no matter what time of day it is, no matter where we are in our life. But there are 3 barriers that I'm going to talk about in this video that are getting in the way of us using it constructively or to achieve the things that would really bring us joy and fulfillment. And I'll talk a little bit about the science of the law of attraction as well, like what's really going on behind the scenes. How does a human being work? So let me start with that. Before we get into the 3 barriers, let me talk about what is being blocked in the first place. So understanding the nature of human being is really important. Who we are and what we are is essential to be understood before we can begin using these principles to create the life that we want and the things that we desire. And there are many things that get in the way, but when we understand how we work, how we operate as a human being, we can start to make adjustments that get us into alignment with our core purpose and our ability to attract and to achieve what it is that we most desire. So let me explain first and foremost how we operate as human beings. Now, this is a map and a model. It's not something to believe in, but there's this very simple science to this. You can just test it in your own life. You can just observe it in your own life. You can observe other people and their lives. Fundamentally, let's just start with this basic assumption. Like all scientific principles and theories start with an assumption. The basic assumption I'm operating from is that life is happening, and life is happening in us, and life is happening through us. And it's not just happening, it's actually seeking something. Okay, life is seeking something. It's seeking to achieve more life. It's seeking growth. It's seeking to expand. If you look at nature, if you look at trees, if you look at animals, it's looking to survive. Right? We have basic survival needs where we got to eat and drink and breathe. And, it's like we're on a mission to basically keep ourselves alive. But that's not all there is to life. It's not just about surviving. It's about thriving, right? How do we create prosperity and abundance? And how do we bear fruit like a tree? How do we give more richly and abundantly to the world around us? If we observe nature, that's some of what we see happening inside of nature. So we have this principle that I'll call just life force, or the life principle, the life dynamic. And it is a thrust. It's an impulse, right? It's beating our heart. It's circulating all that energy through our system. It's creating our bodies, and it is driving us forward to fulfill its needs, its wants. What is it going after, right? And so we're to really get the law of attraction working in our lives, we want to be in alignment with that. We want to know what it's doing, how it's doing it, and what might be getting in the way, and start to create optimal conditions so that we can begin to let that impulse of life force or the life dynamic in us go after what it really would. It knows. It's like it knows. Life happened in us and created us and brought us forth without us having to do anything about it, right? When our parents, got together and there was conception, life took over and it started creating, and it's generating and multiplying the cells and organizing and arranging and constructing and designing us. And we weren't really consciously doing any of that, were we? So this unconscious principle, this life dynamic, we get in touch with. It wants to continue growing us and expanding us, just like it did from conception. So here's what you need to know. There's this life principle, and that life principle works essentially in a sequence of how it is that we create results in our life. And the sequence is very simple. This life principle exists. This is the power, the cause that there is inside of us that's able to produce an effect through us. Okay? And it starts by producing the first effect, which we call thought. Thought is the first effect. Okay? I'm actually going to write this down. So this is the function of human being. So we need to know this. The function of human being. First function of human being is that there is a cause, and we call that the life dynamic. Okay? It's a power, right? There's a power. It's causing activity in the physical world, right? In the physical universe, there's effects being produced, there's changes being made, transformation is happening, growth is happening. That's the life dynamic. Step 1, source of everything, the cause of everything. Source is another synonym for that word, cause. But this causational capacity, the capacity to produce an effect in the world, actually also has another part to it. We'll create like a little sub bullet A, that other part of it is that it is aware. It's awareness. Okay? It has a capacity to be aware of the effects that we're producing. So we want to understand how we function, right? So that we can start to get mastery over ourself and our functionality and produce the things that we want in our lives, right? And this is how we begin to use the law of attraction more scientifically, because a lot of people think that we're just gonna, we're gonna think our way into success, and that's not it. We need to get mastery over multiple levels of our being, these functions of human being, which I'm going to show you. So, cause and awareness are the first components, and I would consider this to be the spiritual being. Okay? This is the spiritual being. The spiritual being is capable of producing causes, and it is aware. Okay, that's the center of who we are, the most fundamental unit of what a human being is. Okay, and that is not that is separate from the physical universe. It works inside of the physical universe. It's working through us. It's working in the physical universe, but it exists independently of it, and it has its own life essence to it. Okay, and there's many spiritual people who have been enlightened and had enlightened experiences, including myself over 20 years ago, that made this real for me. That I got that, oh my God, this is real. I am a spiritual being. I am more than just the physical material that I'm made up of, and more than my thoughts, more than my emotions, which is where we're going next. All right, and I got that. So it's important to understand that essentially you're this beautiful, vibrant, alive presence of spiritual being that is capable of producing effects because it is a cause, and it is also having the capacity to be aware of the effects it produces. Okay, so this is how we start to understand and master our mind and ourself, and really get to know what we're all about, so that we can start to use the law of attraction positively and remove the barriers that are getting in the way. So I'm going to talk to you about that. So the second component, the first effect that's produced, really, the second component of the function of human being is thought. Okay? This is where we get things like Think and Grow Rich, right? Or many people using the law of attraction, thinking about what they want, focusing on what you want. That's great. That all happens in thought, but that's not all there is to the function of human being. And you can't just work in the domain of thought to get what you want. Why? Because there's other levels. Now these are step down sequences into physical manifestation from the realm of the source, the cause, which is your capacity to be aware of what you're producing as a cause, the effects that you produce. The first effect we produce is thought, right? We can think thoughts, right? Now our thoughts can also have a life of their own. We'll talk about that. It's a different dynamic of the human function. But the cause that we are produces thoughts. We can think. I can think about a rose right now, and I can cause my imagination to think and generate ideas and concepts. I can think about things, and I can consciously think. Now, there's also an unconscious thought, and there are creative and unconscious ideas that come forth. But there's a relationship to our conscious and our unconscious, and the things we do consciously do affect our unconscious and what comes forth from the unconscious. So I don't want to get too much into that. We're going to keep it simple here, but thought is the first effect that we produce. But that's not all. The next effect that we actually produce within ourselves, and this is a step-down sequence into producing reality in the physical universe, this is emotion. Okay? Emotion. Emotion is a whole different realm. This is realm 1. This is realm 2. All right? A lot of therapists and counselors and stuff understand that we're not just dealing with thoughts. We're not just dealing with the conceptual realm, the cognitive realm. We're dealing with emotions. Emotions are very different. They have a different language. They have a different vibe in the body. There's a different biochemical function there. There's a biochemical function with thought that's different. They're different. They're interrelated. They're not separate. They're totally connected. But they do follow a sequence. Now, emotion can affect thought. As you know, if you're feeling, the emotion of anger, you start to have angry thoughts. But also your thoughts can affect your emotions. So there's a bi-directional communication. Very important to understand this function of human beings. So if you create what you want, you got to know how to use yourself, right? How do you use yourself constructively? Well, if you don't know these dimensions of your being, these key dimensions, you're going to be trapped. So the next component or function of human being is action. Okay? So there's some in-betweens and there's more details and nuances, but I'm not getting into it. So basically we cause thought and produce emotion, which is a little bit more physical, right? Thought is a little bit more metaphysical, right? It's not just happening in the brain, it happens beyond the brain. There's thought waves that are beyond the brain. Science is proving a lot of these things now. It's really amazing. But thought is more than just in the brain, although it uses the brain. All right, but thought also hits emotion, and emotion communicates with thought, and emotion is more bodily oriented than the activity of the brain. Emotion happens more in the region of our heart and our stomach and our gut. We feel our emotions down here in the body. So you see there's like a step down sequence from like the spiritual dimension or the causational source dimension down through thought, down through emotion, and then we're going to go right now into action, right? So how we think and how we feel is how we act. We never act apart from thinking and feeling, although our thinking and our emoting, I'll say, can be unconscious, right? We might not be fully aware of what's going on in the mind, right? And that's again, there's that subconscious factor of thought and even emotion. We may not even have awareness of our emotions, called alexithymia, technical term. In psychology, it just means like the lack of connection and awareness to our own emotions. The ability to articulate our emotion isn't there. We can't speak about emotion. We don't know how to understand or relate our emotions to other human beings. We just aren't trained in that. All right. So action flows from thought and emotion, and thought and emotion flow from the cause or the spiritual being that we are. Now, the goal in using the law of attraction positively, and I haven't heard anybody say this yet, so I'm excited to bring this new stuff out. The goal is to identify with the spiritual being that we are, the causational awareness unit we are. And there's a neutrality to that. It is not in the realm of the duality of thinking, which is right and wrong, good or bad, black and white, up or down. Like, there's this polarity in thinking. I'm not saying that's bad or it's wrong in any way, shape, or form, but it is a level of polarity and opposites, right? In the spiritual dimension, at the causational dimension, there's just this unified wholeness. And that's where our wholeness is. And that's where, as we move into awareness of spiritual being, as we start to train our thoughts and our emotions and even use our actions to support us in that, in becoming aware of the causational being, the spiritual being that we are, we start to find more peace. Now, I'm going to talk about how to do that. I'm going to talk about the 3 barriers to using the law of attraction. But first, we needed to understand these functions of human being. So we're not done yet, though. All right, this is a step-down sequence, right? There's a cause that produces thoughts and then emotions, right? And those emotions cause us to produce actions, okay? And so our actions actually affect the people in our lives and the physical world around us, right? If I start running around my room and just tossing things all around, I can make a mess inside of my room and just, create chaos. Now I can also walk around my room and I can start picking things up and start organizing things according to categories and things after their kind and create order and symmetry and balance inside of my room. So you understand that our actions, but I won't do that. If I'm in a angry, frustrated, chaotic state, my thoughts and my emotions are going to be, in that space, then my actions are going to reflect that. I'll probably be messy and disorganized and chaotic. And I might want to throw things around if I'm upset and whatever, we smash a desk or, people get really angry sometimes or they might internalize that anger. They might direct it outward. But basically thought, emotion, and action produce what's called results. I love this. It's so simple to understand. That's why I call it the science of human behavior and high performance. I didn't title that there, but I call it the function of human being, but it also can be called the science of human behavior because it's just how it works, right? Just think about this on your own. Just reflect on this and you'll see. It's very easy to test the reality of this. You don't need to believe in it. You can actually just see it in your own life. You think, you have emotions, you take action, and it produces results. The results are, right? And if I pick up this eraser, I just picked up the eraser. The result is the eraser is now in my hand. But it started with me as a cause producing a thought, and it translates into emotion, which gets my body. Emotion isn't just the feelings of anger and love and, all joy and bliss and all that stuff, or, grief or whatever. It's also the ability to convert thought energy into biochemical responses that can then be channeled through the body into action. All right, so a lot of us don't understand that emotion actually is the bridge between thought and action. And so this is why it's so important to understand if we're going to use the law of attraction constructively or positively in our life and create the things that we really want and desire. So results is the 5th step of the sequence, but it doesn't stop there. Results in themselves are neutral, right? If I pick this up and I toss it across the room, it just went across the room, right? It's just there. And now I could say, oh man, now I got to go walk over there. I got to go pick it up. I'm going to go out frame of the video. I might disconnect from you guys for a minute. I can think and I can have feelings, right? And emotions, whatever, and sensations in my body about the result. Now that right there, there's it's made up. Now we might habitually interpret and make what's called meaning, okay? Meaning, we give meaning to the results. Now this is where a lot of us get messed up. Now actually I wasn't going to talk about this as a barrier, the meaning that we give to things as a barrier to our results. But meaning can be a huge barrier to the results that we get. What we make things mean, what we make people mean, what we make their words and their actions mean, or their lack of words or their lack of inaction. And a lot of this is all unconscious. It's not conscious. It just happens. Meaning happens inside of all of us automatically. So we got to master this sequence, this function of human being, our own functioning. Right? We get a manual on how to operate all kinds of devices that we have. We learn how to drive a car step by step. We're taught how to do things, brake and gas pedal and their steering wheel and shifter and all kinds of stuff that we need to know to drive this vehicle or to use our technologies. But when you come into this world, you're not given a how-to manual on how you work. Right? So this is the how-to manual on how you work, and this can allow you then to use law of attraction constructively and positively. All right. So I'm not going to go too much into this today. There's a lot to talk about. I'm going to be teaching on this all the time. So subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're on YouTube, or just follow me if you're on Facebook or on Instagram or wherever. And I'm going to continue producing this content. I'm going to teach you guys more and more. I'm going to break this stuff open, week after week until you can really get it and start to apply it. So I'd love to show you how to apply this in your life and really just transform everything in your inner world and your outer world by understanding this principle. All right, I've been doing this for over 20 years. For those of you who don't know, my background is actually, a life of crime and drug dealing and heavy partying, which led to an overdose in 1999. And in 1999, I got a quick, reality check and realized if I don't give up this life and this way of living and operating that I'm operating in, I'm going to die, literally die. And I made a 180-degree turn, and I began seeking answers, and I had a profound spiritual awakening within a year that just, opened me up to the fullness of life inside of me. And it was the most profound experience I've ever had, even up to this day. And it changed me forever, and it made me want to continue pursuing more understanding. What did I experience? What was that? And what am I to do with that? And so that's like my life mission now for 20 years. And I've transformed my life over and over and over again. And when I look backwards on everything, I didn't know this in the beginning. Okay, I've been teaching this for about, I've had this about 10 years now in my life. I've been coaching and, training and counseling people around this material and how to improve their life through understanding this, and also through different coaching processes I use to support people in gaining control and command over their conscious and subconscious mind. All right, and understanding how those things work. So this right here is really, it's everywhere in my life. I've seen it all over. I've used these principles to change my life. I didn't know I was being a cause. I was changing my thoughts, my emotions, my actions, the results I had, and the meaning in my life. And things started to change. I started to attract beautiful people into my life. I started to attract the type of work that I wanted and needed, the type of people that I wanted to share my experiences with, and everything started to open up for me. And but I also started to attract things that I didn't want, and I didn't understand why. And that's where I'm going to get into the 3 barriers to using the law of attraction here in this video. So you got this, right? You've got that function of human being is such. There's a cause. There's an awareness unit that you are the spiritual being. Let's call that a unit. It's a unit of pure consciousness. Okay, it's pure consciousness. It's beyond meaning. It's beyond thought, emotion, action, and results. It is primordial. It is first substance. It is the origin, the genesis of everything, right? And the thing about it is it doesn't have a beginning that actually is left in some kind of past. This is an eternally present principle. Now, I'm going a little bit deep into this, and I didn't plan on that, but maybe you want to be with this, all right? So this is an eternally present principle, this cause awareness unit. It was there from the beginning, and it's there in you, here in you, right now. Right now, you're it, okay? Now, here's what most of us have going on for us. This is getting in the way of us attracting things that we want. And I'm not yet writing down the barriers, but we identify with our thoughts and our emotions and our actions and our results and the meaning that we give. And we start identifying with this, and we disidentify from the source. And that disidentification, I would say, would be the primary barrier to the using the law of attraction. but it's not one of the three that I'm going to talk about. But that would be the primary, first, most fundamental thing. If you're disconnected from who you actually are as a creator, source, and a cause of everything, a generator of everything in your life, 100% responsible. If you can't, know that, not just conceptually, but in your whole being, like feel that and know that, it's going to be difficult. Now, to be like creating consistently all the time what's really good for you and what you really desire, because there's other things creating in you and through you, and that's going to be what we're going to talk about, these barriers to using the law of attraction. So I'm going to go grab my eraser in case I need it. All right, so here I am. Let's talk about the 3 barriers. I want to do that over on this side. 3 barriers. 3 barriers. Okay, the 3 barriers are actually simple. There are a number of different barriers, but we're going to talk about some 3 primary ones that you can make adjustments with almost right away. Barrier number 1 we'll talk about is your diet, which includes food. Okay? Why? What you eat. What you eat affects your energy levels. It affects your neurotransmitter levels. It affects your the quality of your experience in your physical body. All right, your physical body is a conduit. It's a creative conduit in this world of the physical universe, right? And if your body is impeded by the different things that you eat that aren't healthy for you or drain your energy, I'm not going into a dietary lecture here whatsoever. You kind of know, almost all of us instinctively know something about what's good to eat, what's not good to eat. And there's a lot of information. So look that up. Find out, start using the law of attraction to understand what foods are going to energize you and what foods are going to de-energize you. And I'll talk about that in a future video, I'm sure. Okay, but I'm not going to go too much into it. But diet doesn't just include food. Diet also includes your information intake, right? I'm going to say info and food intake. What you put into you, okay? What you put into you does affect you, okay? And the info that I'm talking about is, what are the videos that you're watching? What is the music that you're listening to? What are the patterns of information that you focus on the most? Video games maybe, or books that you read, newspapers. Whatever you're feeding yourself is going to affect your ability to use the law of attraction positively and constructively, because the information going into you becomes a part of your mind. It becomes a part of the way you see the world. And how you see the world, how the world occurs, this is the occurring thought and emotion. Okay? This is the occurring world. How things occur to you. Right? This is they form also what I call your viewpoint. Okay? It's the way you see things. It's the way your frame of reference, right? It's the framework of your interpretation of reality and of life. And so your food intake affects your body, which is important. Your body is going to also call it how you feel, and how you feel, how you have emotions and feelings and sensations in your body determine your level of attractiveness or not. So the food you take in is key, right? If you don't have high energy, and exercise also is part of that. Diet and exercise could go together as a barrier. If you're not getting a little bit of movement energy, your ability to attract things, your magnetic resonance is going to be low. And if your magnetic resonance is low, then you're not attractive, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get that north-south pole of the magnet on, right? Like high powered, and so that there's a circulation of this current of magnetic energy, and then we can pull into our lives what we want, or we pull into the present moment what it is that we're really desiring. Now, we're always pulling into this moment what we're meant to, based on who we are and our thoughts, emotions, and how we feel inside, right? And like what's going on. We might not be aware of that, but it's always that way. And for those of you who study law of attraction at all, you get that there's really nothing that's happening to you. It's all happening for you as a result of you. So this 100% responsibility is intense, but it doesn't mean that we're at fault for the bad things happening to our lives. It just means we got to understand what it is inside of us that's bringing this about. That's our challenge, and that's our opportunity. And our pain actually becomes our purpose if we allow it to. Okay? But that goes down into the meaning category. What are we making the pain mean? Right? Does this painful situation mean that something's wrong with me or the world or people? If that's what it means, then I'm going to shut down. I'm going to close down. We need to expand into life. And I'll talk more about that in another video. Second barrier, all right, we got info intake. So stay with the first barrier for a minute. Info intake, be careful what you're reading, what you're listening to. Be careful, like, it's going to affect your conversations, what you talk about. What goes, out of your mouth is going to affect you. It's going to become part of you. What you speak is embedded within you. Right, it becomes part of your cellular system. Right, literally creates and shapes your body. We know our whole body is this vibratory pattern of atoms and molecules and quantum particles, really. And all of this affects that quantum particle level of our being. And those slight, subtle shifts inside of us affect the way we're vibrating overall. And that vibratory field, either vibrating high or vibrating low, determines what we're attracting to our lives, what we can attract into our lives. And that's the whole purpose of this video, is to help you start attracting what you want by understanding the 3 barriers to using the law of attraction. But I wanted to go into science of human behavior, or the function of human beings, so that you could actually start to get how you work. And we're going to go deep into how the law of attraction relates to all these components, right? All right, second barrier, big one. People. A lot of us. Now, I've worked in the drug and rehabilitation industry for quite some time, for many years now, because that's my background, right? I went through that, and I've turned my life around. So I'm a great representative, and I'm a life coach, business coach, I'm a recovery coach, and a transformational leader and trainer. So I love to see people transform. And working in recovery centers has been the hardest thing to see sometimes, the people in that and what they're dealing with. One of the biggest challenges that people in recovery face is breaking away from the people in their lives that keep them under the addictive influence and the addictive personality, right? And that's the behaviors. Our relationships to people are so important. We're not meant to live alone. And the people that we have in our life and how we relate with them and how they relate with us affects us so greatly. It's beyond even what most of us believe. But it is said that we'll never be more successful than the 5 closest people to us. Right? The people that we're the most close to are the people that we're most going to be like, because we have something that science is now calling mirror neurons, and we literally mimic other people. You'll know that you'll hang out with a certain group of people and you'll start talking like them. When I went to Canada for 3 weeks when I was, how old was I? 13, 12, 13-ish. I remember that after like every sentence I'd be like, yeah, you want to go to the park? You want to go to the park? Hey, I started saying this little A, what, like, what do you want? I had this little coming. I have an Italian family, so it's partly there too. But in Canada, it's really strong, and I don't have it now. It's been, a while since I've been hanging out with it. But I just started to talk like that, and I came back, and people were like, "Why are you talking like that?" I was like, "Oh my God," it was unconscious. I didn't even realize it. I was already just speaking with an accent like the Canadians, right? My Canadian family and friends that I was hanging out with up there, and it was just 3 weeks of my time. All right, so I just want you to get the serious. Some of us spend years with people that are just not healthy for us, and we keep relating them, and like it's so hard sometimes to say no, and just say no, and like little by little, you don't need to cut people out hard, but you need to just kind of like evaluate whether you want to spend more time with this person or not, and really just get, is this serving you? Is this energizing you or de-energizing you? Is this really nurturing and feeding you? Is it affecting? Is your dietary intake with these people healthy or not healthy? You need to ask yourself that, and believe me, all right? So people, all right, change the people in your life, get new people, seek out new people in your life, and they'll help bring you up. Now, this requires a little humility and willingness to ask for help or ask for connection, friendship. We got to go there. But I promise you, it'll boost your ability to use the law of attraction positively. The people in your life that are negative and they're not about who you are, they're not willing to let you expand and become someone new, they hold you to an old pattern, this stuff gets in your way to using the law of attraction. Major barrier. Major barrier. But there's even another major barrier that's even probably more primary than all of these, more fundamental. And this is one that's not talked about inside of the law of attraction as far as I know. I've never heard it yet. And I've been hearing about the law of attraction for, 12 years now or so, or more. 13 years, 14 years. Yeah, not even from, Esther and Jerry Hicks. I'm talking about law of attraction from people like, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich stuff, and, the stuff way before they existed. Abraham Hicks existed. I'm talking about like Science of Mind from Ernest Holmes, like early 1900s author and teacher, and where all these things come from, the New Thought movement. So I got turned on to these principles way back, and these thoughts and these ideas a long time ago. And I got to tell you, I've never heard anybody to this day talk about this. Everyone's focusing on thought, and then some people start to talk about emotion or feeling. That's important too. But what's the barrier? Why doesn't that work for everybody? Why do people focus? They affirm, they say this, they say that, but something's still not working. Why? Because of something, big fat T word right here. Something we have All of us have. We either have it or we're in denial about it, but we all have it. Biggest thing right there, trauma. All right, trauma. Said the T word. Trauma happens to all of us. Even birth itself is a traumatic experience for 99.99% of us. Sometimes in the womb, there could be a traumatic experience for our mother having morning sickness. These traumas in our relationship to our mother early on, and our parents early on, and the things we go through in life, whether we're getting fed, cared for, nurtured, anything in the beginning stages of our development, can all affect, they do affect the way that we interpret reality and experience life. And so the trauma that we have can override all the positive thoughts, all the even good feelings you try to create. Trauma can sabotage everything. Trauma can cause you to attract people that are really not people that you would normally want to hang out with or be in a relationship with. And trauma can actually affect your diet and the food intake and information. It actually can guide all that. The problem with trauma is trauma for all of us is suppressed for so long, because we go through painful moments, we just suppress it, we don't know how to deal with it in the moment, and then it becomes repressed, and now it's just below the conscious level. But here's the thing, it's still in our brain and our nervous system, and even what now scientists have been proving through tons of research, it's way into our body. It's more than just emotional, it's into our flesh, it's into our physicality, and trauma is going to be the number one barrier. Trauma will, aside from not being spiritually identified, but that's also caused by trauma. So the barrier would be trauma. Disidentification from your spiritual well-being is an effect of having trauma in your life. Trauma, as defined by Gabor Mate, is dissociation from self. When we go through trauma, we begin to dissociate from an aspect of ourselves. We begin to disidentify with ourselves as we know ourselves. We may disidentify with good qualities. Now, I just recently processed some heavy trauma in my life about a week and a half ago. And what was coming up for me was this first time realization that I consciously, now at the age of 11, I started getting involved with like gangs and crime and just bad life, and even satanic stuff, because I had friends that were there's the people aspect, right? I had a friend of mine who was like, hey, let's worship Satan, and I had no clue what that meant really. And so I was like, yeah, what does that mean? He's like, we'll get superpowers and all this stuff. And so he painted this beautiful picture, and I was kind of like naive and like, yeah, sure, let's do that. But it really affected my life, and I did not know that. It brought tremendous worlds of evil into my life, and I got myself in a lot of trouble. But the trauma that I saw coming up, all this hurt, this anger, this violence that happened to me and happened through me, because I became a violent human being. I was involved with gangs and drug dealing, crime, and robbing people at gunpoint, and it was a crazy life that I lived, and lots of fighting. The trauma that I was experiencing coming up was revealing how I suppressed the goodness of me. So I began to disidentify with the goodness of me in my own heart. The goodness, like the me that cared about people, that was compassionate, that didn't want to hurt anybody. I started to remember through this recall, right, of the traumatic events, and not just the mental stuff, but the emotional and the physiological components of my trauma, because that's the work that I do, by the way. In my coaching work, I deal with this. This stuff comes up when I'm coaching people for performance. I've found out that trauma is in the way for everybody, right? And like, if we want to improve the performance, it's not just getting them skills and a plan of action and accountability to do it. Why aren't they doing what they're saying that they're going to do? Why are people not following through? Why is the law of attraction not working for people also? Well, what I found out is that the trauma inside of us impedes everything, right? We can have the greatest intentions, the greatest, wanting and desiring and believing and affirming and writing our affirmations and gratitude journaling and all this stuff, and still we get nowhere. Really, we make some progress, but we don't make major progress because the trauma is not complete. It is not complete, and it's not processed within us. And this is where I spend most of my time working, is helping people really find and integrate whatever traumatic experiences they've had, and get that it's not something to be ashamed of or they need to hide anymore. It's not something that needs to rule or run their life anymore. We can actually get complete with it, and we can own it, and it becomes the most powerful source of energy in life. The reason I'm so dynamic right now and I'm so alive and excited to share with you on videos, because I've had so much of this in my life, and I've worked through so much of it. I've faced so much of it. I've faced it, and you got to face it, you got to feel it, you got to embrace it, and then you can heal it and make it whole. So I say face, feel, embrace, and heal the trauma. And when we do that, it liberates us internally, physiologically, emotionally, and psychologically, so that now we're more in touch with the cause awareness unit, the spiritual being that we are, and we can actually produce the types of thoughts and emotions and actions and results we want, and we start to give meaning to things that actually feeds and nourishes our lives, instead of being controlled by the traumatic influences that are operating inside of us subconsciously. This stuff right here, number one killer, number one barrier to using the law of attraction positively in your life. Now, I'm going to go more into detail about what trauma is and how it works, but we all know we go through a painful event, right? Something happens, and we either want to fight in that situation or flee the situation. Okay? This is what happens and why a trauma is actually recorded in the body, not just in the brain, right? It's in the brain, the whole nervous system, and the physical body itself. And then it then stays as a recording that can replay, or it's continuously, chronically impeding and affecting our ability to create what it is that we want in our life. It's chronically holding us to a certain vibration. And I'm going to talk about the emotional attitude scale soon that shows where we are, vibrationally, so we can just monitor what's going on and what are the successive and progressive stages of emotion that we move through and its relationship to our attitude. But that just kind of helps us see where we are. It doesn't help us move anywhere necessarily. We got to deal with the trauma. We got to break through that. We got to face it, feel it, embrace it, and then heal it. And it's not something we can do on our own. It's something that can often, be done one-to-one to a degree. But I have found that trauma is most effectively eliminated as a source of control in our lives by having a group coaching and relating experience designed to help us overcome the self-limiting factors of trauma and those incidents in a conscious and cognitive way, an emotional way, and in a feeling and sensation way, and actually even an activity way where we move our body even and we generate energy. But as a group, the group energy dynamic produces more power and attention and a sense of safety and security and stability and belonging that allows us to actually comfortably break through trauma instead of having to deal with trauma in very uncomfortable and sometimes unmanageable and dangerous ways. But it's not something to be feared. It's something that we can love ourselves free from. But to love ourselves free from it alone is impossible. I've been unable to do it. I've been highly trained. I'm a very powerful being, highly effective at the work that I do, and I've needed support time and time again to do this. And I create group support for people so that they can do it as well. So we're going to talk more about what trauma is in later videos, but I just want to say a couple things about it. Trauma is, again, our dissociation from self, or the spiritual self, right? It's a dissociation from our pure, essential, creative, potent energy to just produce and be who we are in life, right? It's just consciously. So trauma impedes that, and it impedes it from an unconscious standpoint. So trauma is, I said, in a moment, it happens like this. I want you to understand what it is, and how it happens. But something painful is happening, right? We're experiencing maybe someone who's abusing us, and we want to fight back, but we're overpowered, so we can't fight. We want to flee, but we can't get away either. Okay, so we can't. We choose not to fight back. Maybe we just succumb. We want to flee, and we can't flee either. We just succumb. So then what happens is we freeze, and in that freeze response, the immobilization response, it's called, we actually then record this trauma into our system. Instead of the fight-flight energy being played out from the sympathetic nervous system, we actually are unable to fulfill the commands that are automatically happening inside of our brain, our nervous system, our biochemical reactive nature that's there to cause us right, pumping adrenaline through our system. And we want to use that adrenaline to fight back or run, but we suppress that. And when we suppress that, that's when it's recorded, and it works against us, and it locks into us, and we get locked back inside. Now, I grew up in an abusive home, watching my mother be severely abused by my stepfather, and I love both of them dearly. I'm in conversation. I love them from the bottom of my heart. They went through what they went through back then. Things have shifted a lot for both of them, and I have nothing but love. But there was a lot of abuse. There was alcohol and drugs, and there was other things involved. I grew up in this. I was very young. I was 10 years old when I started witnessing this, and it deeply affected me because I didn't feel like I could fight, and I certainly didn't feel like I could flee because this is where I live. This is the people who take care of me, and I didn't know how to speak about it, and I didn't process it. So I got involved with gangs, drugs, and crime. as a means of escaping the trauma that I was carrying in my body. That was my avenue, and that was also patterned into me because the people I grew up around were already in that life, and then more people I grew up around were getting into that life, and so I was just like sucked right in. But it's basically the inability to fight or to flee, and it creates this immobilization response in our body, and we can suppress these natural responses to fight or flee through our own conscious thought. We can, be like afraid to act out the energy, and we don't complete the cycle. It's called the arousal cycle, right? This sympathetic nervous system producing all these chemicals that wants us to fight or to flee, and we do all that. And like animals will just shake off this energy if they're getting chased after a while and they finally escape or whatever, or they do even freeze and they fall down and somehow they get away. The animal doesn't end up killing them. They'll get up and they'll just shake off this energy and wiggle their body out and they'll look all strange. We won't do that when we experience trauma because we get, self-conscious, and we don't want people to think we're weird or whatever, and we don't feel safe to do it, or the environment's not safe to do it. The people around us tell, don't cry, don't feel that, shut up, don't whatever. And so we suppress the trauma, and it just doesn't ever get resolved. And so it records and it stays in us as unresolved. And then the rest of our life, until it's complete, is seeking completion. And that's why we have relationships that don't work, or we have careers that don't work, or our whole life is shaped by this. So I really want you to get to these are the three major barriers, but this is number one. And that leads to a disidentification with our spiritual being. And we start to believe ourselves as an effect of life rather than a cause and a creator and a source of life itself. And so if you want to attract powerfully in your life, you need to understand that you are the source of it, right? A magnet is the source of its attraction, right? And if we want to be attractive, we got to be free from this trauma that has our bodies not attracting, because we believe ourselves to be the effect of rather than a cause of life. And that being at the effect of means we expect things to happen to us rather than things to happen through us. Does that make sense? We expect things to happen to us because it already has. And so we can end up attracting more of that stuff not working out the way it didn't work out in the past because we're incomplete with some traumatic incident and event in our life. And so no matter how much we try to use the law of attraction by changing our thoughts or even our emotions consciously, it doesn't work powerfully for anybody that I know until we start to deal with this domain. All right, so I'm going to wrap up this video by saying I thank you for watching. If you like this video, subscribe if you're on YouTube. Follow me if you're on Facebook or Instagram or wherever. I'm going to be producing a heck of a lot more of this stuff. I would love to hear your comments, your feedback, your thoughts, whatever you got from this. Did it work for you? Did it make sense to you? And any questions you have, any things you want to know. If you have any questions about what I was teaching, all of your communications are going to help me deliver to you what's going to empower you for life and success in using the law of attraction or just being a creator, source, and cause of your life and producing results that make you feel alive and fulfilled, right? Because you're connecting them to the feeling of fulfillment and aliveness that you already produced in advance of having the result. All right, so we're going to start with that. We'll talk about more about how to use all of this in the next video. I'm going to leave all this here and I'll come back to it. My name is Vince Polito. Appreciate you watching. Thank you for being you. And we're going to move through all this together. I love growing with you. I love hearing from you. So thank you. And I'll talk to you soon.